Okay, let's hear it for Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And it's all yours.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Fahey. I'm the controller of the Illinois CPA Society, Director of Finance. I'm here today to talk to you about what our finance department does and who's actually part of our team. I also want to talk to you about vendor payments and our process and how you play an important role. And I also want to talk to you about the expense report process and how you also play an important role to that process as well. Let me introduce to you our team. We've got Tony, and one of her main activities for our team is to enter invoices and pay our bills. We've got Elisa and Karen. Elisa's our accounting specialist, and Karen is our accounting manager, and their role is to basically put together the monthly financial statements. They're also reviewing invoices on a weekly basis. My role as the finance director is to sign checks, to work with the other departments on making sure that they're getting all their finance questions answered, and help them through any kind of issues that they're having. And Jen is our CFO. Her job is to pretty much oversee the entire department. What does the finance department do? Now, you might see Karen at her desk with a big spreadsheet up on her computer. You don't really know what she's doing over there. You see Tony, you can hear keys clicking, but you're not really sure what she's doing over there. Everything that we're doing is basically preparing for our annual audit. Our annual audit is kind of like our Super Bowl. Every May we have our auditors come in and they audit our financial statements to make sure that they're accurately presented and that they are reliable financial statements that our board members can look at. Some of the routine activities that we do are process invoices, process expense reports. When you get your paychecks, all of that information gets put into our financial statements. I want you guys to understand the role that you play in our financial statements so that we can have a good audit, so we can have happy auditors, so we can have a happy board, so we can have a happy company, happy employees, and essentially happy members. Since all of our members are CPAs, or most of our members are CPAs, they expect us to have a successful audit every single year. Next, I want to talk to you about the vendor payment process. Our vendor payment process involves you because you guys are the ones that submit the invoices to us. So what I need you guys to do is understand how you play an important role in this process. There's a few things I need you to do before you're sending us our invoices to pay. First thing is, when you get an invoice in your inbox from a vendor, I want you to make sure that you're checking to make sure that that invoice hasn't been paid yet. By doing that, you're going to make sure that we're not just sending out money for no reason. We've already paid that invoice, we don't need to pay it again. Secondly, I want to make sure that you're taking your invoice and approving it properly. Who can approve invoices? Managers, directors, VPs, and the CEO. Everybody who's above a manager status, or manager status and above, those are people that can approve invoices. So first we need proper approval. Second of all, we need proper coding. So if you have an expense that's related to travel, I'm going to make sure that you're coding that to the travel account. I'm going to be emailing everybody after this presentation a list of accounts that you guys are going to be typically using so that way you can help code your invoices properly. I want to make sure that you're coding your invoices properly because if you code an invoice to travel and it's really supposed to go to the magazine expenses, I want to make sure that we're getting it into the right bucket. Why? To go back to our annual audit, we want to make sure that we've got accurate and reliable financial statements. That's why we need your help. Once we have an invoice that is properly coded, properly approved, the invoice then goes to Karen and Elisa for review. They're reviewing all the invoices to make sure that they're properly accounted for, all the expenses are in there, make sure the expense code makes sense, make sure it's been approved properly, and then once those are reviewed, that gets shipped over to Tony. Tony sits there, enters that invoice into our system, and pops out a check. Once that check is printed, she sends it over to me, and I review everything to make sure that everything is correct for a third review, and I sign the check, and that payment gets sent out the door. I'm going to have you guys repeat after me. Ready? Thursday, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Thursday, 2 o'clock.
Thursday, 2 o'clock.
Why is this important? That is the time when we need our invoices into Tony's inbox so that way we can make sure a check is cut that week. It's very important because I want you to understand the process. when you send an invoice to Tony, it just doesn't get put into the system. Karen reviews it, or Lisa reviews it, and then Tony gets it, she puts it into the system, and then a check is cut. So if we don't have an invoice until Friday at 3:00 p.m., there's no way that Karen and Elisa can get that reviewed, and Tony can enter that and print out a check, and then I can review it and get that check signed. So that's why we want to make sure our invoices get entered by Thursday at 2:00. Next, I want to make sure that you guys understand the process. Once an invoice is entered into the system and a check is cut, checks are cut on Fridays. I sign them typically on Fridays and Mondays. If you need a check throughout the week, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to cut a check for you anytime during the week. Lastly, I want to talk to you about the fact that I need to make sure that you all know that every check that's over $3,000 needs 2 signatures. This is very important because a lot of people don't know this. We've got our VPs that are the other check signers. And if we don't get a second signature on that check that Friday when they're not in the office, and you need that check that Friday, there's no way we can give you that check that Friday because we don't have a second signature. So I need to make sure everybody understands, if the check is over $3,000, I need 2 signatures on that check. Next, I want to talk to you about the expense report process. The expense report process is very similar to the vendor payment process. The only difference between an expense report process and the vendor payment process is an invoice. The vendor payment process has an invoice. You get a vendor invoice, you send it to us, we pay that bill. In expense report process, we get your expense report, which kind of serves as your invoice. We'll pay that, and we'll pay your expense report, and then you'll get your check. The difference between the two is that if a vendor sends us an invoice and we don't pay it, they're going to send us another invoice, and then they're going to send us another invoice, and then they'll send us another invoice. So we want to make sure that we get those paid as soon as possible. If you don't send us your expense report with your business expenses on there, there's no way for us to know that you have business expenses out there, because you're not going to send us, if you didn't send us the first time, you're not going to send it to us a second time or a third time. So we want to make sure that you send us all of your business expenses so that way you get paid and our financial statements are properly stated. For example, let's say that you go traveling to a conference every single year. Let's say you forget to send us an expense report for that. That expense is not going to be in our financial statements that year, and then we're not going to budget for that expense for the next year. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for everything properly. So why is the expense report process important to you and important to us? One, we want to make sure that you get paid for every single cent that you spend. Also, we need to make sure our financial statements are properly stated. Let me talk to you about how to account for mileage, because this is a very important, hard topic to talk about. Or I should say, hard topic to explain. We reimburse for mileage that's over and beyond your normal commute for a day. So let's say that you typically walk to the office. That means you don't get in your car ever to go to work. But let's say you've got to travel to your conference that's down the street. If you've got to travel and you actually get in your car, you're going to be expensing the entire mileage that you've commuted for that day. How many people drive to work? Excellent. All of you guys, your personal commute is the mileage to work and back home, so your round trip mileage. So let's say you're traveling, let's say you guys who drive to the office, drive from the office or drive from your home to a conference and back home. When you're actually computing your mileage, you're going to be taking that full mileage and subtracting your personal commute for the day, which is your travel to and from the office. Any questions? Excellent. So that's the personal commuting miles. You're going to be taking that mileage, you're going to be entering that into the expense report. There's a mileage computation at the top of the page that's going to tell you how many cents per mile. Right now the rate is 56 cents per mile. You're taking that rate, multiplying it by your hour or your miles, and you'll get your expense that you'll be reimbursed for. So, in conclusion, I just wanted to tell you guys all about our finance department, introduce the team to you so you all know where we are and who we are, and if you've got any questions, you can come to any of us because we're always available for your questions. We serve you. Wanted to tell you about our annual audit. And if you guys see us really, really busy in May, we're not ignoring you, we're just really busy with the audit. That's our, like I said before, that's our Super Bowl. We've got our vendor payment process, I want to tell you about that, so you understand your role and how by approving an invoice correctly and coding an invoice correctly, you guys are helping us out by making sure that we've got more accurate financial statements. And I want to tell you about the expense report process, so that way we all have all of our expenses into the system properly. So, thank you very much. I hope that you guys are able to help us win our Super Bowl this year, and thank you very much for your time.
Awesome.